Welcome to the Jason Claus Show. I'm Jason Claus, your host, and today we're talking about, as always, good ideas for small business managers. Today specifically, we're going to be talking about communication, what we say versus what our people hear. And before we get into that, though, just a little reminder, most of you are getting this podcast because you remember me as Jason, the sales guy for Insight. And what you might not know yet is that I also manage a small team. The audio cast that I'm putting together here, it's about trying to put together the best ideas and tactics and strategies to help a small business manager be good at his or her job. And so what you can expect from me is a twice a month podcast with some articles and some guests and a website that we're going to build out with some resources that we can all use to get better at what we do. Like I said, we're going to be talking about a pretty good topic. And I've got as my guest, I'm having Samuel Hatton back. Samuel joined us last time when we talked about habits, and we had such a good time and honestly, such a good conversation in preparation for this one that you just had to come back. So welcome, Samuel.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I got a couple of articles that we're going to be reviewing together. Two of them are really just about making my point, right? The first one it's a blog entitled "I'm Not a Liar, but Facebook Sure Is." I thought that was a good title. One of them is an article that I actually wrote, so I know it's very self-promotional, but it makes the point. It's entitled "Combat Negative Self-Talk with Instructions." And then the last one is the one that gives us some good ideas. It's from a fellow that calls himself the Leadership Freak, and his blog is titled 10 Ways to Say the Right Thing Every Time. And then at the end, I've got an announcement about our progress with the survey, and then we'll close it down from there. So without any further ado, we're just going to get right into the first article. It was published on a blog called Feichel Front Porch. It's a family blog. Written by a lady named Madison Feichel, and it was actually Heather Chapin who forwarded it on Facebook or something.
Nice.
Heather, by the way, is Mike Chapin, Insight's CEO. It's his wife. So thank you, Heather. Broadly speaking, the theme of this article is pictures lie unintentionally, and I really liked what Madison had to say because she's basically going out there on a limb and saying that we're always putting our best foot forward on Facebook in our pictures and the things that we tweet. And my wife and I are always kind of joking about things that go up there. I don't know if you do the same thing with April. Like you'll read one and it's like the faux thankful post. I'm so grateful that I'm in Cancun enjoying this. It's such a blessing.
Right.
And all you're really saying is I'm in Cancun. Isn't that awesome?
Right, or my time this morning was so nice. Then there's the classic coffee with a book, all picturesque.
Right.
You're like, man, that person had a really nice morning.
Yep, absolutely. And so I think we're all doing it. I think it's part of the reason that we're all checking our walls every morning, and some of us even more than every morning, right? But thank you, Madison, for writing this article. Thank you for putting it out there and kind of copying to it. In it, what she's got are a couple of photos that she's posted and sort of what the picture is of that photo, the mental picture of, here's my beautiful family. And then she talks about what was happening that day.
Right.
And it kind of, she sums it up in a great quote. I'll just read it. "I recently told a friend I want to hear all about your new job and move. I've seen the pictures on Facebook and you just look so happy." And then her friend replies, "Well, it's been really hard and the kids are miserable in the new situation," right? So complete different, the truth and the picture, they're not the same thing. It's not a lie, though. It's just not true.
Right.
And that's the first part of what I want to talk about, right? We're encoding things all the time when we're communicating. Whether you're a manager or it doesn't matter, right? When we're talking, I'm sharing something with you. And there's all these other things that are getting compiled into that before it's transmitted to the receiver, right? So that's kind of the first part. The second part is the receiver. And we're inherently flawed in the filter, I think. And maybe it's just Western culture, but maybe it's a human thing. I don't know. I know for me, I know it impacts me.
Right.
And it's this idea that they're all going to laugh at us. This notion that I'm this high school kid and I'm so afraid that I'm so self-conscious, right? Sorry about that.
So like if anyone knows any like a little thing about me that is just a little bit off, like then everyone's going to point it out. Like the pimple on your chin or something like that.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the article I wrote was actually about a tactic that I use. I use self-instructions, right? It's a way that I try to combat that chorus of negative voices that are telling me that they're all going to laugh at me, that are telling me that I'm not good enough, right? But it doesn't. It's just a way to combat it. I don't know if there's any way to make it go away because I think it's always there.
Right.
And I think it actually colors everything I'm receiving from someone else. And so, before I get to that, I want to kind of maybe talk about it another way, right? Maybe some people know that I do stand-up comedy as a hobby, or that I used to.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I actually took a class to kind of learn how to do comedy. And there's a school in San Francisco called the San Francisco Comedy College. It's run by a guy named Curtis Matthews. I'll include all of his stuff in the show notes. But he teaches you how to do stand-up. One of the things that he teaches you is the writing process. And so, this idea that they're all going to laugh at you is kind of how we live most of our life.
Right.
The worst thing that could ever happen to a comic is what?
Is that they all laugh at you.
Is that they don't laugh at you.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, that they
right?
don't laugh at you.
It's completely reversed. And
right.
I just thought that was funny, so I want to share the story. It's how Curtis taught us to write jokes, right? You write a joke, and in your mind it just sounds hilarious, and then you tell it, and you don't get any laughs. Or you're afraid to tell it because it sounded really funny to you when you wrote it, and then you're up there and you're practicing, and then you don't tell it, right? Because you psych yourself out. That he called it the inner critic. And the tactic that he taught us was, right, you write your joke, you have your writer space on the stage. It's usually your notebook right by the stool.
Okay.
And then the microphone is someplace else, and you kind of move back and forth as you're working out your material, right? This is as you're working it, not as you're performing it, right? So you'll see it. So if you ever have seen a comic working material, he will perform the joke, and then he'll back away and look back at his notes.
Right.
And so
I've actually seen that before.
Okay. And what Curtis says is that at that moment, you're battling your inner critic. It's the voice going, this is a terrible joke. Don't even tell this joke.
When you're looking at your notes.
When you're looking at your notes, right? And the fear starting, and the whole for me anyway, the whole reason to do comedy is that when it hits, it is such an awesome feeling. Right. It totally pays for every dud. Right? But psyching yourself up to actually get up to the microphone and tell that joke the way you wrote it, the way you intended it, takes some courage. And what he says is that you have to read it. You have to let the critic tell you whatever he's going to have to tell you, and then you have to say, okay, no thank you, and then you go into your performance space and you perform. And that's that iterative process is how every comic has created comedy from, since stand-up was invented.
That's awesome. That's great.
Anyway, but it's applicable here, right? That critic, right? That chorus of voices that taints everything. So with those two kind of, there's the problem with the sender, right? The fact that I'm probably encoding things unintentionally into the message that are going to screw my intent up anyway.
Right.
And knowledge of the fact that the receiver of that communication kind of has an overly critical filter that they're viewing this communication through, it creates a real challenge between a manager and the team member that you're constantly having to think about, right? It's no wonder so many bosses and so many employees don't get along, right?
Right.
Or at least that's what I'm thinking as I'm trying to work through this.
They're constantly thinking that every single thing that is coming out of my mouth is being picked apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the key point here in kind of summary format, if what they hear is the most important piece of the communication, right? And that is the most important piece of the communication.
How they hear it.
What I mean is less important,
right?
Because that's kind of the pie in the sky sort of thing. What you hear, right? How you interpret it, that's the reality. That's the most important piece.
Right.
So if that's true, and if it's also true that the deck's almost set against me, and that, Samuel, we're on, I'm your manager, and so that's, if you hear something from me and you're running it through that filter, the deck's kind of already stacked against me, right?
That I might hear.
You might misinterpret, right?
Exactly.
So as a manager, how can I make sure that what you hear and what I mean made up, right? And also my intent behind it, right? And I know it seems like, well, duh, but we've got some examples. Like we were talking earlier this afternoon, and there were things that you thought about, things that I had said years ago that had it wasn't what I mean, some of it was true, but some of it was just not at all, And so I think it's something that we're all doing and that we're always doing. And if we can concentrate a little bit on trying to combat that, we're going to be more successful from a communication standpoint.
Right. Do you want to get into that a little bit, like as a concrete example?
Actually, it kind of makes great sense. Why don't you share one of the stories that we...
Yeah, so the story goes that when I first came on the team, Jason was awesome. Plain and simple. He was giving me a lot of good pointers and things I had never considered before, and I tend to be a very grateful person and vocally express that. I always have been, always do, and Jason said, I'm fine. I know I do my job good. You don't need to keep telling me that you appreciate every single thing I say. He's like, so just stop. And you even pulled me aside to tell me. And I thought that I interpreted Jason saying that as, Samuel, you're being manipulative and you're trying to put us on the same level, and I can't manage you if we're on the same level. So stop, just stay down, or stop giving me positive reinforcement, because I don't need it. I know I'm doing my job. Pretty much, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you were only partly right.
Right.
It was, it's only, it was important for me in that moment to establish that, I'm the steward, and you're the one that I'm supposed to be looking after, right? I manage you. And I was concerned that I was not going to be able to do that, because you kept trying to. It was almost like you're like, hey, I see what you're doing, and that's a great tactic, and I really like that. We're peers. We're buddies, right? And it's impossible for me to steward your career if we're peers.
Right.
And so I was attempting to do it, but I had no intent to try to make you feel bad. Or you even said that I made you feel like you had to cut off part of your personality.
Right. So,
which, if for no other reason, if nothing ever comes of this podcast, and Mom, you're the only one that ever listens to this, understand that that's really powerful and really beneficial from doing this, the fact that we had that conversation. And I think we're going to do another podcast next time, more centered on it, specifically that, and different tactics that we can use around that. I'd like to stay maybe a little bit broader this time, but it was really a great example. Yeah,
it was a good conversation too. It was a good conversation for us to have. So
yeah,
it was good.
Okay, so some tactics from some other people, right? I follow a blog called it's called Leadership Freak, and it's written by a guy named Dan Rockwell. I think I actually retweeted this one or maybe something like that, but. His blog, it was 10 ways to say the right thing every time, and I'm including the link here on the slide deck, and it'll be in the show notes. And I highly encourage you to follow it's great. He's kind of throwing out great ideas there around leadership and business centric sort of leading your team in 300 words or less, which is cool. All of us can do that. And I plan to probably highlight a lot of his stuff because I think it's pretty insightful. Anyway. I'm not going to read you all 10 because you go read it to get those. But the ones that jumped out at me, some of it it's more about, it's not so much the things that you say, but maybe your mindset, right? Imagine you're the person that you're talking to, and do it before you open your mouth, right? I think you'll agree that's not something that's something I can work on. It's something that I should put some more effort into.
That's almost like the golden rule.
Yeah. I like these next two, right? Speak to older people like they're your parents, and then speak to younger people like they're your brother or your sister.
That's good.
The other thing that just jumps out at me, and the people that are on your team that you're responsible for, it's a business relationship, but that you're important. This brother sister type, I'm the big brother type thing. It's important to me that you sense that I care, right, and that I want to, and I try to do that. I don't know if I'm successful at that or not. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it's something I deliberately try to do. I don't know if it's even received or not.
No, I sense it, and it's good, and it works. So
it's an important thing for me personally. I don't know how it fits into a slide deck or a tactic. I think it kind of comes. I kind of end up saying this over and over again. You got to care.
Right.
None of this stuff works if you don't believe that it's authentic. You know. Seek feedback on your communication and style effectiveness. I think I just demonstrated that. So
right, and that's something that's very, very difficult for us to do, especially when we're trying to build relationships at work. Because like when you're asking for feedback about your communication, you're pretty much asking for feedback on your half of the relationship, which is business relationship, which is like really, really. It's a difficult conversation, and sometimes it's difficult to navigate. So,
yeah, I agree. Dial back strong emotion. This one jumped out at me because I know I thrive on them, and they don't always work. They don't always work to my favor. I'll point back to self-instructions for that. That's just something that.
Do you have a self-instruction for that one?
I think the biggest one that applies to this one is that I know my feelings are always real, but they're not always true. And so it's something that I can repeat to myself when, I don't know if it ever happens to you, but I can kind of feel my dander getting up, and that's where I kind of got to remind myself, give everyone a benefit of the doubt, always assume positive intent, right? Things like that, right?
You're gonna off the show, you're gonna have to like show me where I can get those, or just.
I could share them. I mean, I'll share some of them. Some of them are a little bit too personal, but
no,
the ones that are business specific, I'll be happy to.
Right.
Yeah, I got them in that little satchel. You've seen the little holder.
No,
I've got
just a few examples, because I need those for myself. It's like I've seen when you first told me that you were doing some of these self instructions, and hey, just bear with me at this moment. I have seen them very much improve in the ones you have shared with me, in the way that you do interact with the team. So yeah,
that's cool. And then the last one that jumped out at me, courtesy, right? Exercise courtesy. Good manners matter, and they matter most when you feel like ignoring them. I always tell McKinley, my 5-year-old, please and thank you,
right?
And because honestly, I don't hear it that much in the world.
Right.
You can. It's a good way to try to communicate intent, I think. So I got some other tactics, and I'm actually gonna. I mean, I'm kind of delving back into another podcast that we did when we were talking about how to creating a communication environment for working with your boss, right? But I love this idea of don't mean and do mean. To create the contrast, right? To try to box in exactly what it is that I'm trying to get at. And I'm kind of struggling for an example right now, but I have been trying to use it in discussions with just about everybody.
I really hate the way the building looks outside. I don't mean that we need to go ahead and invest all this money to repaint it. I do mean that we should think about maybe how it looks and clean it up a little bit. And so kind of like.
Yeah,
that's just random.
Or maybe that the other example that you gave when we were talking about the email that I sent you saying, hey, can you take care? I need you to help me with this, this referral, with these referrals.
Real quick,
right?
So Jason had sent me an email, and he's like, Samuel, do you have any ideas of a way that we can show them appreciation through a gift or something. And I replied some ideas, and then you replied back.
I just want you to take care of it and come back and put some thought into this and get back to me.
Right, which
like
I interpreted as those ideas that you came up with are no good. I want you to come up with better ones.
Right.
Which was definitely not what you had meant.
Not at all what right?
Right.
And so,
but I believed that was what you had meant all the way until we had that conversation earlier today.
Yeah. So again, another great reason for the podcast. If for no other reason than just Samuel and I can get a better understanding for one another, this podcast is a good idea.
Right.
But right. So the first problem with that specific one, I think, was that it was an email conversation. And the second that we got confused, or we probably should have gotten on the phone together, right? Maybe at some point we should talk about.
But we forgot to say what you had intended. You had intended for it to be on my plate.
Yeah, I had so many other things that I wanted to do, and I was so tired of kind of the same stuff we've been given partners and customers when they refer business to us. I wanted to try something different, but I couldn't shift out of what I was doing now. Right. But I think do mean and don't mean would have, here's what I think, Sam. What I mean is that I'm just what I just said, right? I can't get to this. Right? I need you to take it, run with it, and do what you do, which is come up with creative, interesting ways to, to brand Insight and to create good experiences for people.
Right.
What I don't mean is I'm not saying that I want to brainstorm right now, right? Which is another thing that we do, right? And kind of knowing, right?
And I was looking for a brainstorm via email, which is also a bad idea. It should have been over the phone.
Yeah, that's another thing. Maybe that should be up here. Is that it's really hard to communicate for a lot of people. There's probably people listening to this. Well, I don't know. My mom's the only person listening to this podcast, but let's just assume there's some people that I want to be listening to this podcast. They might not be communicators, right? They might be more asynchronous email type communicators. And I think there's a way to apply this. I don't know how it is exactly. If you've got ideas, please send me an email or send something to the website or because that's important too. I actually listened to another podcast on Ruby on Rails, and the host of that podcast, he can't speak highly enough of what he calls asynchronous communication. Sending and his idea is that if you just take the time to craft the email properly, that's more respectful of people's time. And he's right from his perspective. From mine, I look at that and I'm like, I just want to get on the horn and talk it through. Right? That's the most efficient way to do it.
And there's always a time and place for either. I truly believe that there's always a time and place for either.
I mean, there's probably entire series that we can do on this, and probably should with our audience's help.
I'm envisioning a 10-week series on phone or email, bonus episode or text,
maybe. We'll see.
Or Facebook.
What do you mean by that, Samuel? That's a nice segue, I guess.
Well, what I don't mean is that we should actually do it. What I do mean is that we should actually do it. I don't have a strong opinion.
Right, a strong opinion. That's a code that. I think I may have actually written about it before, maybe on the Insight blog. I don't know, but the idea that
you're the only person I've ever heard say that. By the way,
what
strong opinion? I have a strong opinion about this, or I don't have a strong opinion. So, I'm just saying it's really helpful. It's more of a new concept for me, and I've never.
And it's not my idea. I just can't remember where I picked it up. Maybe I should do some research and try to remember where I got it. But the idea with I have a strong opinion, it means that we're shifting from debating and talking. Unless I say I have a strong opinion about something, then the decision hasn't really been made yet, right? Whatever it is that we're working through, in my mind. Once I say I have a strong opinion, that means we've kind of moved from let's collaborate and try to figure out the right direction to go to I've decided what we need to do, and I just need you to be on board and trust me, and I'm giving instructions now. Right. And another thing that came out of our conversation was that while you kind of, I think you kind of got that, there's actually some gaps that we can talk through, and that's all. That's what I want to talk about on the next podcast. I want to really kind of dig into that because I think that would be a great episode for everyone. And then finally, there's some questions here that, I can't tell you how much mileage I get out of what do you mean by that, right? You tell me something or a prospect tells me something. I think it's better, for me it's easier in the sales sense. A prospect will say, yeah, we had this email problem. It was all wonky. And I'll go, well, I'm really, can you help me understand what does that mean exactly? Was it down? Was it just intermittent sort of problems? What does wonky mean? Right? And I know that's an extreme example, but it's that kind of thing, right? Wonky could mean a whole bunch of things. Mm-hmm. Now this one I know that I use with us all the time, right? It's what else? It's
your flagship question.
What else, right? And the other thing is, I think that by now you believe I expect something, right? It might be that, no, we're done, Jason. That's everything. We're done now. Mm-hmm. But I'm expecting you to tie off with me so that I can move forward. And then the last two, I don't have a slide for them, but there's a fellow out there named Gary Pica that has really been a good mentor to me. He focuses solely on companies in our business, and he's the one that introduced me to this concept of what happens next and what happens after what happens next. Now he introduced it to me in a selling context, right? To try to understand what the reality of the conversation is. But what I was listening to him, I think it was yesterday, actually.
Right, yesterday.
Where one of the other people on the webinar said, I use this with my wife and kids, and it has completely changed the dynamic. Right. And it's this idea that I can, Samuel might come to me with an idea, and okay, let's do it. Assuming that I'm assumptive about, okay, we're going to be moving forward on this. It's a great idea. What happens in your mind? What's the next thing, right? What are you expecting from me?
So now what you're asking is not just for the idea, but for the implementation strategy or for the first step. And if I haven't articulated the idea all the way, then I don't have that ready. And now I see the idea that I had might not have been formally or all the way there, but if it is, now you have more information to be able to make a decision on if it's a good idea or not, or what we do with it,
right? Or even just understanding what your interpretation is of what we talked about is, all right? So based on, I feel like we're on board here. I feel like we're, here's what I heard. I think we're ready to move. I think we're ready to get into this, right? Yeah, okay. Based on that, what do you see as us doing? What should we do next? Now I stop there. What I'm going to start doing is saying, okay, all right, let's assume that goes exactly the way you want. And what is that? All right, then what happens? Right? So clearly get where you're at so that I can align, so that I know, right?
This makes it so that you don't interpret my idea differently. So now you have a full picture of the idea. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. That's what you mean.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, and we get it. Or, I was thinking something different. Because when we don't do that, what tends to happen?
You say, make it so, just like Captain Picard, and then all of a sudden, the ship blows up.
Yeah. I keep thinking about in relation to this, what jumped in my mind was that project that we did for the technical account managers with the brochure. Right? We had with the John Grover, who leads that team, he came to us and said, listen, we're launching this new program. It's called Hardware as a Service. It's kind of a new idea. We'd like to have some sort of marketing slick. I don't remember what he called it, but we need a job tool to be able to share this new concept with clients. Right. And we heard one thing and kind of went off and did our work. And when we came back, we had kind of missed the mark on it.
Right.
The eye opener was there was a whole bunch of, okay, assuming we get we need to get the messaging right, and then we need to package it in something. What's after that? What happens after that? Right? And what we should have been looking for, well, at some point you need to get feedback from the rest of the team. That was the part we missed, right? And I know everyone listening has got to be like, well, duh. Well, duh.
Right.
No one's ever going to accuse us of being the sharpest tools in the shed.
If it's a job aid, who is going to be using that job aid?
Right.
What do you mean, and what else would have been really good questions to ask during that time too. But I think the what happens after what happens next probably would have nailed of course you're going to have to get feedback, and then do the design.
Right. That's when we would have gotten Casey to look at it and say, listen, this is just too salesy. It needs less dressing, you know? Anyway.
Right.
Casey was right. That's, he was the end customer, and he was right. And anyway, live and learn, right? The next one is going to be right on. In fact, we're applying that now, right?
Right. Yeah, we do that. We learned and moved on, and now on with the next.
Right on. So that's kind of all we have for what we say versus what they hear. And I hope there's some ideas in there that our listeners can find helpful. I know that just doing this has given me some ideas. I wanted to, in our last podcast, we talked about the survey. We've had it going for a few weeks now, and we've gotten some really good response. I want to say thank you to everyone that's taken the time to complete the survey. I think it's been really helpful. I think this is actually this topic. It comes, we fast tracked it because of that. So you can see the slide deck and the video. It's up. It'll be up there. But I'll just tell you what the topics are shaken out. The number one thing you guys want to talk about is communicating, followed by listening and decision making, leading, developing talent, team building, and then it kind of goes down from there. So we're going to concentrate on the top 5 to begin with: communicating, listening and decision making, leading, and developing talent, and team building.
Which I think is the topics that we're most interested in anyway.
Yeah.
Did you also notice that this goes from soft skills to technical skills?
I didn't notice that. Interesting.
Really interesting, huh?
Well, that's fortunate, because that's the stuff, like you said, that's the stuff we kind of like to talk about. So we'll be building more and more content about those things. And the next one definitely is going to be about how we've implemented strong opinion, and I want to tell the story. Lots of cool things happen today. We'll tell that story when the time comes. Well, Samuel, thank you for being on the show. I got your bio up here right now. If you didn't already know this, Samuel runs the marketing operations here at Insight, and he does a fantastic job. You can connect with him if you want to on LinkedIn, Samuel Hatton. You can find him on Twitter, not at Pally Sam anymore.
Samuel P. Hatton.
Samuel P. Hatton. Sam has decided he's growing up.
Right.
That's what he said. What does that mean, Samuel?
My Twitter name used to be Pally Sam, and it's like a little code that I know what it means, and everyone else thinks that, I'm a pal, and it doesn't really mean that. It's just a RPG gaming term. So anyway,
that's fun.
I am now Samuel P. Hatton, using my middle name on Twitter.
There you go. Right on. Well, Samuel, thank you for being on, my friend. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Join me for the next one, maybe.
Yeah, as many as I can. I really like being a part of the conversation. So.
Well, as long as you show up, we'll figure something out. Some other some closing thoughts for the show. That survey's still open, and I'd be grateful if you could go to jasonclaus.com/survey and take it. While you're there, you can consider signing up for the email. We'll be sending out. We're going to start sending out the emails every time we post a new episode. And if you feel like it, head on over to iTunes and rate the show. That would be really, really cool. And then next time we're going to be talking about creating communication ground rules. I'll also be probably making some announcements about some additions to the site. I've been working kind of through some other resources other than just the podcast to be sharing up there for the community. And that is the end of the show. So until next time, I'm Jason Claus with Samuel Hatton. See you later.